Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
Well, it's just a show. How can I contain the thing they said the same? Knowing that you're right, blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and up the sun. Why do I feel so old? I got me everyone.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. An important edition, I think. Actually, I think this whole week has been important. We did give you a little bit of history. Today, I want to give you some answers. Because, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And the answers are out there. I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Joshua Daniels, Terraformers. He's been on my show many times. There's been some new developments. Hello, Joshua. How are you?
Living the dream, Clay. How about you?
Well, somehow I feel like I'm about to. I'm really not planning on changing my environment radically, but I've been pounding on my audience here for the last week that we really got answers here. There are things that we can do with the knowledge that we've got if we work together. If we work together. Stop fighting among each other. Stop finding fault with each other. And learn from history. Because if you don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And the history I've given to people over this last week is pretty bloody, pretty gory. We're talking about murders, rapes, and general tyranny. And I kind of want to address that today with your permission. But I want to give you a venue, first of all, because I would like to go to work, and I'd like for everybody out there, I'm not trying to get any special treatment here. I want to go to work for terraformers. I want to go to work as a terraformers. Because I believe what you are doing, producing solar power, is really the answer. It may not be the whole answer. It may not do the job as well as you'd like. But until we can take over the power companies, until we can build with the blessings of our government and our public officials, until we can build thorium nuclear power plants that aren't dangerous, that aren't going to kill us, and that could provide us with free electricity, I think you got the next best thing. Take it away. Oops, I just lost your sound there for a second. I can see your lips moving, but I couldn't hear you.
There we go.
There you go. Okay.
Testing. Okay. Somehow I had bumped my other mouse and hit my mute button. I've got two different computers here.
Yeah, I hate it when I push the wrong buttons.
Yeah. Solar is a big part of the answer. Wind is going to be a huge part of the answer. We at Sun Direct Power are working on a windmill that will start making power at low wind speeds, and it will produce large amounts of power inexpensively. We've just taken the work that's been done on windmills so far and taken it to the next level of inexpensive and efficient. You know, it's what we do as humans. We're constantly improving whatever we've already built. And this one, if you need more power than one windmill provides you, you can stack them. How's that for weird? You don't have to take a bigger piece of your backyard, another piece of your backyard to set up another windmill. You just put the new one on top of the old one. It's pretty amazing. Then eventually, as a society, where we're going to end up is with wave power from the ocean waves. When you see an ocean wave that's, say, 6 feet wide and it raises up 6 feet in about a second, okay, you just watched a horsepower happen. And there are millions upon millions of those happening every moment of every day. It's just a matter of deploying the plastic barrels out there to bob up and down in the waves and capture that power and transmit it to a shaft. And then we're making electricity we can transmit inland as a society. But the powers that be don't want that to happen. And it's not that they'd rather burn coal and gas and everything else. It's that they don't want there to be free power. They don't want it to be easy. They want the poor people to have to struggle for it, and poor means anybody who isn't rich. Okay? So if you're making $100,000 a year, as far as they're concerned, you're poor people. These people are just downright evil, and what's gonna change the game is that they are actively trying to destroy society, and they're going to succeed. They don't realize they need us. They really think they don't need us. And, oh well, when that happens, we're going to see the prophecy of Obadiah in the Old Testament come true, where these people are hunted down to the last man, woman, and child and killed. But when that happens, society will be destroyed, and our biggest problem that we face, anybody who cares about themselves and their young'uns, is to get through the population bottleneck that's ahead and come out the other side sane and healthy and clean. I mean, just basically, able to have hot water to wash with. So that means independence. And in independence, there's degrees of independence. Like if you grow all your own food and make all your own clothes and make all your own medicine, and you have a coal mine on your property and you have an iron mine on your property and you have, time to build an electric generator and make all your own light, that would be the most totally amazing level of independence. It's not really possible for most people. And of course, the level of independence you'll never achieve is reproductive independence. You got to have a husband or a wife. Okay? So there's some degree to which we're always going to need other people. But as much as possible, we should be able to meet our needs from a group of people who are at least not our enemies. Right now, we're having to buy power from our enemies. We're having to buy gasoline from our enemies. We're having to buy vehicles and clothes from our enemies. This is not a good situation. Not good at all.
No, it's not, and that is what I plan on addressing in the latter portions of this show. We've had people
Awesome.
that have done a lot of research on this, and it's shocking to people that want to believe that things are just the way it was with your grandparents. But I tried to point out the other day, your parents and your grandparents kind of screwed you too. They didn't know. They were as deluded as you are. They were as mind controlled and brainwashed as you are. It was done by newspapers, not television, not computers then. But
at school.
what did they do? They gave away all of our gold.
Well,
$16 an ounce.
Our grandparents were just as helpless about that as they were about anything else going on. I mean, there's two main views of the United States Constitution going back 30, 40 years. One is that it was a work of genius, and the American Revolution was this great and noble thing, and the other is that it was a complete fraud. And I can prove either one of those cases. Okay? In 1781, while the war was still going on, the colonies negotiated the Treaty of Paris with King George of England to repay the money he had loaned them to fight the war. Now, why is a king loaning his subjects money to fight against him? Because it's a giant false flag. It's street theater, right? And like I said, I could prove the other case too, that it was a great and noble undertaking by people inspired by nobility and goodness and righteousness. I can prove that too. Both of those were going on at the same time. From the beginning, the average person has not had the power to bring criminal charges against anyone. Only a district attorney or a U.S. attorney can bring a criminal charge. And they even have the power to ignore a grand jury if it hands down an indictment. They don't have to do anything with it.
Now, that's interesting that you said that, because one of the things that I was thinking about while I was going over today's show is that's really what we need to do. We need to put some of these banksters in jail. They're criminals. They've stolen from us. We need to indict them. We need to put them before a jury of their peers. But in the situation they've set up, I guess they don't have any peers, because they're ruling the same way that the kings of old did.
Yeah, and they can argue that jury, the people on that jury aren't my peer, and our answer will be, as soon as we indict them for their evil, it will be obvious that they are your peers. Sit down and shut up. Anyway, because the average person has really been powerless from the very beginning of America. Our grandparents, they didn't so much betray us as they moved the system forward a little bit, and I really, really don't blame them for this, because they didn't have the internet where they could learn the ways in which they'd been lied to. I mean, it wasn't until the internet was, 15 years old, that we found out that the Gulf of Tonkin incident that started the Vietnam War for America, or that got America involved in the Vietnam War, simply didn't happen. It was made up out of whole cloth. LBJ simply lied to the public to get into Vietnam. They didn't know that. They had no way of knowing that.
They didn't even know about the whole Israeli mission against the USS Liberty either.
USS Liberty, right? That's another one. That's right. And
we thought Johnson was our president. First thing he did on the plane flying back after Kennedy was assassinated was recall all that money that Kennedy issued under Executive Order 11110.
Yeah. The Secret Service, if they didn't kill Kennedy, they were certainly part of the plot, because their main loyalty is to their masters at the Federal Reserve. Their main job is preventing anything else from being money. A lot of people don't realize that. The Secret Service handles counterfeiting. It's their job to make sure that nothing but Federal Reserve fake money notes become money. Well, because our grandparents' knowledge was so limited, the knowledge and what was available to them, I don't fault them a bit. I really don't. And yet I see some real value in the education of that age. I grew up reading things I found on my dad's bookshelf. Hard science fiction by Larry Niven and John Campbell and Joseph W. Campbell and Isaac Asimov. And
don't forget Robert Heinlein.
Robert Heinlein. Oh yeah,
I love Robert Heinlein. I read every science fiction book on the Fort Worth Public Library shelves before I was 14.
But what a storyteller Heinlein was. God bless that man. The Louis L'Amour's excellent westerns. I mean, when Louis L'Amour writes about a spring to drink from or a trail to ride, he's describing a trail he's ridden and a spring he's drunk from.
I've said that in some of my query letters. You know, like Louis L'Amour. If I talk about a mountain pass here, if I talk about a bar in Bimini, I've been there.
Yeah, but to me, more importantly, it was from those books that I learned to spell and punctuate, and I learned grammar and usage. I already knew all that crap by the time I went to school because I had read what was written by such excellent writers and well-edited people. I mean, they could put in the story any level of bad grammar that one of their characters would use, and the reader understood he's showing us how this person talks. It's part of the character. That isn't how you talk or spell in real life, right? We got that, and we were educated just by sitting on the shoulders of giants and reading books over their shoulder while they read them. It
was an incredible education. I could read 600 words a minute when I went into school.
Well, now here's another thing. When I showed up at school at first grade, we were expected to show up knowing how to read. School did not teach you to read. That was Mama's job, just like learning to wipe your butt. That's not the school's job. They don't have butt wiping class. Okay. Today, well, they made it A.
Well put.
Do you know of Beverly Heekman? Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember how, but
she's an educational activist. I saw she's active. I'd have to look her up. I forget. We had some interchange a while back. She posted something on her blog about something fourth grade something, and I responded to this thing about the fourth grade. I said, Bev, how come all of the people who've commented have not noticed that this is not fourth grade material, this is first grade material? and she writes back something to the effect of, you are the first one to spot it, and yes, you are absolutely right. The fact that it takes a school 4 years to get to this point is beyond ridiculous. But our kids these days are just not getting the education, and because they're being trained so early to multitask, and that's a valuable skill, it really is, but they're being hit so hard with multitasking in video games, their imaginations are crap, and their grasp of any subtlety in language is crap. Since the internet came along, even if I read nothing but professional news organizations, they would still destroy my ability to spell or punctuate. Today, I make the there mistake. I make the to mistake. I make the it's mistake, and I don't even see them until I go back and reread what I've written. It's horrible what the internet's done to me. Just dumbed me down like nobody's business. And it's because I'm reading stuff that's written by quasi-literate buffoons. And by that I mean professional authors. It's horrible. Now,
no, it's not time for me to get to our elected politicians yet, so we'll have to.
Okay. All right. Now, in what's coming, hang on here just one second. Sorry, for some reason I'm coughing this morning, and I have to just, out of courtesy to our listeners, I have to mute. It's just nasty.
No problem.
To get through what's coming, or just to be sane in the midst of what's happening, you have to separate from society to a huge degree. That doesn't mean don't buy or sell with society. It means quit being a member, quit participating, establish a different way of life and different values. They talk about representative government. I say, you know what? Anybody who believes that kerosene can turn a steel and concrete skyscraper to powder is so mentally defective they cannot represent me. I do not have a representative anywhere in this government. It isn't representative government. And I'll tell them also, a representative is someone who must do what you say. If I leave town and have you represent me in the matter of renting out my house, and I say get at least $500 a month, okay, and you lease it out for $4, I can take you to court and get the other $100 from you, because you must do as I say if you're going to be my representative. That's what a representative is. So to call a representative anything else is a barefaced lie, and that lie started with our Constitution, which was written by a bunch of lawyers in secrecy. There was no free press allowed, even though they were going to put in a free press clause at the end of it. And they set up a system where we elect people who don't, they tell us this person is going to go make decisions for you. That's not true. And they knew it, that our representatives make decisions about us, not for us. Right? They don't make decisions about, how we're going to treat this other country or that other country. They make decisions about how much money we're going to give them. That's about it. Yeah. So you have to separate from the society and get away from its lies. Get away from the evil that it does. I mean, I have no problem whatsoever with making war if my enemy is actually my enemy. But if my enemy owns property that a wealthy man wants and he whispered in the ear of the king to get a war started to take that property, no, that's murder for money. I won't do it. Will not do it. Won't, not a chance. No.
And it's the same thing if you go to war with people to take their natural resources, whether it's timber, whether it's oil, whether it's gold.
Yeah. That's what Vietnam was. In 1939, Japan was buying most of their oil from the United States, and Vietnam was owned by France. It was a wholly owned subsidiary of France. They had conquered it. They had drilled the oil wells, and the Vietnamese people worked in the oil fields, and the oil got sold overseas, and the money went to the French oil companies. Right? When Japan realized that the United States might cut off their oil supply, they looked around, they realized, all right, the only way we can replace that is from Vietnam. And if we take Vietnam, then we will be essentially at war with France. The United States will go to war with us, and they will immediately begin submarine warfare to blow up all the tankers that are carrying oil from Vietnam to Japan. So if we're going to take Vietnam and get the oil supplies we need, we have to knock out America's Pacific Fleet, which is why they hit Pearl Harbor. And just in case anybody's thinking surprise attack, sorry, gang, it was neither surprise nor unjustified. 6 months prior to Pearl Harbor, Franklin Delano Roosevelt authorized 500 planes and pilots for China to fight against Japan. The moment he signed that paper, Japan had the absolute right to attack any U.S. armed forces.
By the way, my friend Eden Rainey was stationed at Pearl Harbor, and he was a Marine, and they ordered him and his squad to turn in all their ammo. They didn't. And they were able to shoot down one of the Japanese planes. It landed on the roof of their squads, of their barracks. Eden crawled up, pulled the pilot out, searched him, found a map. And that evening, he was ordered to, whoever shot the plane down, whoever pulled the pilot's body out of the plane, were ordered to bring whatever they found to the commander's office. What he
Okay.
found was a map with the location of every ship, with one exception. The aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk was not brought in by the admiral, and the ship that was docked where the Kitty Hawk was supposed to be was the USS Arizona.
Yeah, and we could do a whole show on the absolute betrayal, the deliberate destruction of the Pacific Fleet. But I brought all that up to offer that even Vietnam, the French went in and took Vietnam the same day they took, or the day after they took Pearl Harbor. This was about taking other people's natural resources so that the wealthy people of Japan could continue their war, and then the Vietnamese people at the end of the war rose up and threw off the Japanese and started their own country, and then MacArthur sent a guy in there who actually used the Japanese troops to drive the Vietnamese government out of Saigon and put the French back in power, in control of someone else's natural resources. And they killed to do it. The French killed to keep those resources. The United States went in '64 and killed to help the French keep the resources. And eventually they were driven out, and those resources went to Vietnam's wealthy people. Yay! I wouldn't fight on either side of that war if I knew what it was about. But they never tell you what it's about. They always lie to you. Right? So you need a government in which there are no secrets kept from you inappropriately. When I say inappropriately, with the I'm thinking terraformers. That's not the right word. Why is my brain not misfiring? The freeholders. There we go. With the freeholders, there are secrets, but as you reach the top tiers of seniority, you get access to all the secrets. So by the time you're about 60 years old, you can see the most heavily classified stuff. You're still not allowed to tell anybody in the lower tiers unless a crime has been committed and covered up. Okay, but you can see all the secrets. There is no level of classification higher than that. All right, so if we had a government that had some transparency, so that at least our gray hairs could go examine the record and see what actually went on, right? We might have a prayer, but we have to be independent not only of our enemies, but also independent of lies. We have to be in a situation where nobody can lie to us and get away with it. As Merlin famously said in Excalibur, every time a man lies, he murders some part of the world. When someone lies to you, they deprive you of the thing you need most to be healthy, and that is an accurate worldview. You cannot respond to the world if you think it is other than it is. And when someone lies to you, they are killing you bit by bit.
Now, Biker Dan or my chat room wants to know what you and I think is going to happen this month. I can tell you one thing. I don't think that the moon's going to explode or implode as my friend David thinks. I like David, but don't believe he's got any pre-knowledge of that. But we could have an economic collapse, and we could have a war, and I may be covering that in the article I've got up to talk about. I'll probably start in the second hour on that for you to understand just how evil these people are that we're talking about. And Vietnam wasn't the start. World War I, we've talked about World War I. We've talked about World War II, how the women were raped and murdered by the Soviets. And, you know, Hitler was not the bad guy that the Jewish press made him out to be. He was trying to save the German people from what eventually occurred. I mean, think about the bombing of Dresden by the Soviets and by the English and by us. We weren't the good guys in that war. I don't believe it was a good war at all.
No, the Soviets didn't bomb Dresden. And
no, we did.
The problem of,
Or
problem of
English
rape by
did. England did.
Yeah, no, it was American and British. That was a cooperative raid. The problem of rape in France when the Americans and Brits took over, primarily by American troops, was so horrific that even the French government was protesting officially, saying, Eisenhower, control your men. I mean, it was horrific. And, you know, I watch TV from that era, which is painful the way it's made, but I look at their attitudes toward themselves and toward women, and I think, good Lord, you guys are cardboard cutouts of human beings. There's nothing there. And yet, when I look back, I read literature from before World War I, I find a richly warm human race. Look at the Oxford Book of Military Anecdotes, which, oddly enough, is primarily letters between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. From World War I. Okay, what a rich and loving and warm world was destroyed in that war. Then you go to World War II, and what are you? You know, and no wonder you smoke like a chimney and drink like a fish. You're trying to repress all your emotions so you can act like a friggin' cardboard cutout of a human being. It's amazing. But this, even turning people into that so that they would line up by the millions and kill each other, is a deliberate action of a ruling class that is not just parasitical, but evil in the extreme. I mean, we were actually doing better as societies under the great emperors who could order anything to happen. We were actually doing better because they weren't our enemies. They were just the guy in charge. I mean, our taxes were lower. Our freedoms were greater. I mean, you could, you know, if there was a parade, you could go out there and post your sign, you know, open the border with France or whatever you wanted to say, as long as you didn't touch. There would be like 2 or 3 topics that the emperor didn't want to see signs about, like depose the emperor, or maybe some of his pet projects. But their freedom of speech was actually greater. The taxes were lower. Their freedom of behavior was generally greater. One instance where it wasn't, if something really bad happened, like some national figure died, the emperor could order, you know, all drinking establishments would be closed that day, and no dancing in any public establishment. You're not allowed to go out and be happy because this person is dead. You're supposed to be sad. Okay, so that's a level of control that people would say, oh, that's just tyranny. And, yeah, arguably, yeah, okay. But he wasn't using it to hurt the nation, like George W. Bush when he came out and said, we have a crisis in the banking system. Remember that in 2008?
And gave away $2 trillion to the same people that printed the money and charged us interest for it.
And yeah, when he came out and said we have a crisis in the banking system, it was a barefaced lie. Banks were lending to each other and the public at record levels. There was no economic problem until he declared that there was one.
I'm going to share some of this article that I've pulled up because I think it's important. You can feel free to interject or interrupt me as I do this. In America, we, the people, have all been betrayed by our elected leaders. We Americans are finally waking up to the fact, waking up to the sad and tragic fact that we have been terribly betrayed by our elected officials in D.C. and all the major institutions of the U.S. government. The anger that is now arising and smoldering in mainstream America is unfathomable to the arrogant establishment, which is now being exposed for the first time public for what it is: evil beyond imagination. Yes, finally the American masses are beginning to understand the king doesn't wear new clothes every day, but is actually naked and evil beyond imagination, working hard to fulfill the establishment's incredibly evil agenda for destruction of American America along their path for world domination. Since 1913, the establishment has been able to arrogantly advance their evil agenda in secret because they took control of the major mass media and were able to buy, bribe, human compromise, and control most politicians, federal judges, and eventually stack the Supreme Court. Most Americans have always expected the establishment in D.C. to be an extension of their parents and thus to be functioning as a benevolent parent figure looking out for the best interest of America. Instead, they are wolves in sheep's clothing and incredibly treasonous, and seditious enemy within. Yes, sir.
Stop there. They just. Was thinking as you were reading. Under the kings and the emperors, there would be maybe one or two family members that had some weird sexual predilections that the king or the emperor would wink at, and this person would get away with stuff, right? But if one of the nobles was doing stuff that was just too weird, and word came out, the king or the emperor would quietly get rid of him. He wouldn't make it public, that so and so was raping children. He'd just quietly get rid of them. So in that sense, as the writers of the Protocols of Zion said, that the nobility was the best friend of the commoner. We lost the people with the power to protect us, and today our losses of children to sexual predators is greater than the loss of the zebra on the African veldt to the lions and the hyenas. I mean, we're not doing as well as an animal that eats grass in terms of being protected from predators. And our nobility actually used to do that. That was one of their duties in return for getting to be the guy in the fancy hat. And, even if they themselves, did a little bit of depredation, it was so tiny compared to what we have now. I mean, they're under the kings and emperors up until 1914, there could not have been a Franklin scandal. Wasn't going to happen. I mean, if nothing else, anyone in that imperial government would have seen that as his opportunity to become the people's hero and the next guy in line for the throne if there was any kind of an argument over who got to be king, and he would become the people's champion in rooting out the baby rapers of Franklin and making sure that they all paid with their lives, that they were hung publicly. I mean, that was just that. It was. I'm not advocating a return to that. I'm saying that the people that overthrew that system did so in order to prey on us without restraint.
The American elected leaders in D.C. and in most states have betrayed their oaths of office, consorted with foreign enemies, which are now known for their part in the attack on America on 9/11. They become a criminal RICO tools of the establishment, which has become the world's largest organized crime syndicate and is closely associated with a worldwide secret Luciferian cult and the highest hidden level of Freemasonry. It's the establishment has an anti-human agenda. It's
yes. And I don't really understand what they're for, because they are against humanity. I mean, they've destroyed a fourth of the planet with Fukushima. They're destroying the remainder with mercury vapor in the pollution, in the exhaust from industry, which they successfully fight every time anybody tries to regulate it. They make sure that mercury pollution continues to happen, which we're already past the tipping point. It is going to destroy this civilization. The civilization started about 3,000 years ago in the late Bronze Age collapse, and it's going to be over in this century. It's done. So if somebody says, well, I don't need to get separate from this civilization. Well, okay, you can die with it. And, you know, more power to you. Long may you wave.
Joshua, you know, talk about Fukushima. That is not necessary. The only reason we have these atomic power plants is because that's the way they can produce nuclear weapons. They're moving for a nuclear war. They're trying to instigate a nuclear war between us and Russia. And you know, Russia has never been our enemy. The Russian people are not our enemy, I should put.
No, never. No. The Russian people are only our enemy in the sense that we're willing to follow imperialistic leaders who want to kill other people and take their stuff. The Russian people are homebodies. They just want to live at home and grow their own food and manufacture their stuff, and occasionally they like to sell stuff to the rest of the world, but they're not interested in trying to take over anything and make it Russian. They just I mean, look in 2008 during the war between Georgia and South Ossetia. If Russia wanted Georgia, they could have had it, lock, stock, and barrel. I mean, nine irritated Cub Scouts with rubber-tipped arrows could have taken over that country. And
you know, you almost got to laugh at it. I mean, the nuclear issue, nuclear power plants, all we got to do is use thorium instead of plutonium, and we've got safe nuclear power. The only problem that I see is that we're not just giving it free to the American people. As long as these insiders control it, they can take it from us. They can charge us for it, and Tesla's dream will die again and again. Now,
again and again. Well, the dream of a free humanity will die again and again. And this was, to a degree, this was part of Jesus' dream. You know, Paul said later it was for freedom that Christ set us free. Although, you know, Jesus understood most people don't want to be free. They'd rather, you know, be slaves and eventually die and stay dead. And he accepted that. It's like, you know what? Some people want to live, some don't. Nothing I can do about that.
Well, we are right now, you and I are doing something that these evil anti-humans hate. We are putting out information that's accurate and true. The establishment's recent extreme hubris and complete refusal to allow any serious truth to be broadcast in the major mass media, which, by the way, is comprised of 6 major news corporation folks, which form an illegal monopoly, an actual news cartel that has now raised the consciousness of the public because they can see now what the establishment is actually doing despite its extreme secrecy and refusal to admit any of its evil doing. Yeah, for the first time ever, the American masses and most of the world are now becoming aware of the establishment, that the establishment has an evil anti-human agenda. This evil agenda is to deploy their Talmudic Babylonian monetary and production system and their terror to provocation system worldwide to create massive debt slavery and access for their associated corporations to gain access to other nations' valuable natural resources, just what we talked about earlier, and wealth, and to justify illegal, unconstitutional, undeclared, unprovoked, unwinnable, perpetual foreign wars for huge profits for the banksters and for their associated no-bid large international defense contractors. But now, due to the internet, the new Gutenberg press, the knowledge of that evil agenda is diffusing to the masses and even increasing in pushback, as pushback is now occurring against each main thrust of their notably inhuman, incredibly savage, evil agenda. As this resistance occurs and spreads, more and more is being revealed about just exactly what the establishment's evil agenda is compromised of, and just how anti-society and anti-human it is. Now, the point of that, folks, is that you, listening to this, watching this, you have a chance to stop this, to strike back. If we work together, if you make just a small donation, I don't care what it is, go to freeamerican.com, make a small donation. If you go to Joshua's site and order one of this windmills or the solar
power system.
Solar
Yeah,
power
solar
system.
system.
Then there is money that you don't give the evil agenda. You're putting it in and you are starting to become just a little more self-sufficient.
Yep.
And,
Absolutely.
you know, I've been accused of being a racist, and I recommend that you go to my website and watch or look it up on the World Wide Web. Ron Finley talking about growing gardens in South L.A. He put it so perfectly. Growing your own food is like printing your own money. You know, there are ways that we find this without becoming. Again, I've said this many times, Joshua. How do we fight evil without becoming evil? I don't want to rape nobody. I don't want to kill nobody. I don't want to steal nothing. I want to help everybody as much as I can. Be independent.
First of all, you have to realize what evil has done and start undoing that in a non-evil fashion, in a righteous fashion. Like, evil has removed your boundaries. You don't have the right, you don't have the right to defend something you produced. Evil has claimed they own a third of that in income taxes, right? So you have to reestablish a boundary where you own what you produce, and because you face multiple enemies who want to come take it from you, you need multiple allies who are willing to help defend it. That means separating from society, which wants to tax you, it wants to steal from you, and getting with a group of people who will not steal from you, right? Where your contribution was actually consciously agreed on by you. If you're going to put in time or money or part of the food you grow, whatever you're going to put in to common projects, you agreed to do that. Not some representative went to Washington and wrote a law. Okay, you have to separate and reestablish your boundaries. That can be done without becoming evil, until they actually come for you and start shooting at you. And then you're in a self-defense situation where you're entirely within your rights to defend yourself, not being evil at all. The world involves conflict. It's a matter of fact. You know, the mountain lion tries to eat the elk, and the elk tries to kill the mountain lion. It's just the way it is. But mankind is intended to be above that, to not prey on itself, or even Anyways, that's a different sermon. But in fighting evil, the most important thing you can do is rebuild what evil has destroyed. But evil won't let you do that in the lands that it owns. So you have to go somewhere else. Much of South America is wide open. I mean, the nation of Chile, it's 2,000 miles long, and it's got like 14 people. Okay? You could go down there. The weather is actually very nice in most of it. Right? And it would be home to a lot of Americans because it's cattle country. They have cowboys there, much like we have here. They do things a little bit differently, but the outfits are a little bit different. But you'd be right at home there. Especially as I say, one of the things that's coming up that you have to be in order to survive what's coming is mobile. And the only way to really be mobile in this world is with a wind-powered floating home. which is what we've developed for the terraformers. I say that's the only way to really be free, because if you require fuel of some sort, then you're not independent. You need somebody to drill the hole to get the oil and then refine that into fuel, or you need somebody growing hemp by the hundreds of acres to make hemp oil, which you put in your motor, all right, or in some other way.
Of course, that's why they made it illegal. I mean, George Washington said grow it everywhere, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, he did. And if we convert all the gas engines in this country to diesel and ran the country on hemp oil, we would be able to meet the entire nation's needs on about 20 million acres of hemp. And for comparison, we have about 360 million acres of farmland in this country, which the Department of Agriculture knows about, and they're sure they're actually farmland. And we're farming about 320 million of those. So we have the land available. And minor side note, the powers that be are never going to let it happen, because that would mean that you and I could buy a piece of land and become energy independent by growing hemp oil. They're not going to let that happen.
There's more than that too. There's, as I mentioned to you the other day, you can grow pond scum on a stupid.
Yeah. Well, there was. I heard there was a professor that worked with some. I think it was algae. It was some single-celled organism growing on seawater, and it produced crude oil, actual crude oil, indistinguishable from what comes out of the ground. Which makes sense, because there's, years ago I read an article that if you take leaves and grass, just regular vegetation, and you drop them into the ocean and they manage to sink down to, I think it's about 3,000 feet deep in the water, the pressure actually starts the chemical process that turns it into crude oil in about 5 minutes. And scientists had duplicated that process in the lab by just taking some lawn clippings, putting them in seawater under high pressure, and bang, they had crude oil in about 5 minutes. Yeah. So you can bet that was buried quick. Yeah. So, but becoming self-sufficient, it really does involve being around people who agree that you should be self-sufficient. And who take responsibility on themselves to stay self-sufficient, and to require that anybody who's going to call on them for help also be self-sufficient.
Well, it's becoming easier and easier lately to identify what the actual establishment's secret agenda for America and the world actually is, even though the establishment has worked hard for many years to conceal it. One of the main tools they have used to conceal this secret evil agenda is their near complete control of the major mass media. We know for certain, that the leaders of Russia, China, and many other nations are quickly catching on to what the establishment is comprised of and what its incredibly, unimaginably evil agenda for world domination, world asset stripping, and massive world destruction and depopulation really is. Why has the establishment's secret, incredibly evil agenda become so easy to identify since America was attacked on 9/11? Because the fingerprints of what has been a highly secretive, covert operation against we the people to keep them mind-controlled and asset stripped, which have been traditionally hidden from the American public, are now being revealed in spades by the worldwide internet. And the catalyst for this has become the spontaneous emergent populism that is producing a pushback by the masses against the establishment's agenda item by item. This incredibly evil, anti-human, sociopathic, criminally insane establishment agenda, which has been traditionally hidden from the American masses by a completely corrupted and totally controlled major mass media. As we now know for certain, the CMMM is actually owned by 6 establishment-approved RKMers, and this is now being revealed for the first time and beginning to diffuse rapidly among the masses. Yes, we now know for certain that knowledge of the disturbing facts of the establishment's evil agenda are also spreading around the world and are being diffused throughout the American masses like an out-of-controlled wildfire. It's important to realize that this newly emergent inside information about the specifics of the evil establishment agenda, which is becoming public for the first time ever, is essentially due to the blowback by the public against the establishment and current energetic efforts to impose their evil agenda in various specific areas which are completely unacceptable and alien to most Americans. Thanks to the internet, the actual facts about the specific points of this agenda have been available to many internet users who frequent alternative news websites and then share this information by email and word of mouth to their friends, family, and associates. Kind of what I've been trying to do for 20 years here. And
I think the only reason you failed is not because what you're doing isn't the right thing to do. I think it's just because there's so many people who just don't care. They're living under normalcy bias. That it's like you're trying to use a quarter cup measuring cup to scoop a cave out of a sand dune, and the sand just keeps falling back down in. And eventually, at some point you realize, America doesn't want saved. People don't want, what I'm offering them. And really, they haven't had it in so many years. The kids today didn't grow up with it. You and I didn't grow up with what we're saying should exist. So it's really difficult to convince people when they really can't grasp what you're talking about because experientially they've never known it. What you might be able to do, the approach we're taking is that, people, they get tired of making monthly payments, and so we're saying, hey, come join the terraformers, help us clean the plastic out of the oceans, which they care about, and you can have one of these amazing floating homes and stop making monthly payments because the floating home makes all its own electricity. And then that one little thing is able to capture people's imagination and start getting them moving. Okay, that's something they can grasp. I don't make a monthly electricity payment. That's cool. No electric bill. And along the way, as they work with us and live among us and live free, they'll start to understand. If a government says, "Hey, you earned $100, we own 30 of that," they go, "Wait a minute. When I was dealing with my friends in the terraformers, if I bought something for 50 and sold it for 150, I made $100 and nobody tried to steal that money. This is wrong." See, they have to experience freedom before they really get what it is to have it taken away and be willing to fight over it. And they haven't experienced it. They've grown up all their lives with somebody else owning their money, owning their time. Yeah. So a more incremental approach is what we're taking, and we're having some success with that. Okay, we're growing as more and more people realize just how bad it is and how much worse it's going to get. We're getting a lot more attention and a lot more help. Yeah. So what you've been doing all along has been right. I just think the audience wasn't there.
They have been. The propaganda machine of our enemy and the people that control this press, they are our enemy, but all along they're going, no, we're the good guys. No, we couldn't do that. No, we're the chosen ones. God wants you to. God wants you. God wants you, And it's been pretty effective.
How many propaganda TV shows did you see as a kid about how the press is on your side? Remember Lou Grant TV show about these good and noble reporters who, they were always rooting out evil and exposing it. You ever see, and even Mary Tyler Moore, good Lord. These are all propaganda pieces paid for by advertising and CIA money to teach everyone the press is on your side. They're the fifth estate. Yeah. And so these kids today have grown up with that, and it's tough to get them away from it. They have to experience things that they know to be true, and then see them lied about in the press to go, wait a minute, they're lying about that. Why would they do that? Then they have to answer their own question. Yeah, it's just as long as they're in the system, so to speak, they're stuck.
Well, the establishment's top policymakers who've enacted this evil agenda use various large international corporations to direct this secret establishment policy. This is what we're fighting against. And they keep this secret establishment agenda covered up by controlling the 6 major mass media kingpins that form their existing American news cartel. These 6 major mass media kingpins have been rumored to be under the master control of a single, very large international investment group with major ties to RKM banksters, the large international defense contractors, and the large international oil companies. Certainly, if it no longer takes an insider to understand that it's the super elite establishment that controls the American Congress, the judiciary, and most of the administration, and this control grid is comprised of 3 major sections of control over most of the average American's life. Control over we the people can know, control how they earn a living and accrue wealth, control what taxes they have to pay, control what regulations they have to live under, and engineer what wars their children are either drafted into or conned into fighting. That was my particular case. The folks who actually set the top policies of the American government usually refer to themselves as the establishment because as a group they have attained the raw power necessary to establish whatever controls over society they feel that are necessary to ensure that society, government, and policies goes in the desired direction they want according to their secret evil agenda. Those controls include scientifically based mind control formula, which include microwave and scalar psychotronics and cytronics, which is top secret beyond black psi-power interdimensional technology, and induce hiving behavior in an American masses to stifle a dissent and make them more compliant. Now, that's pretty interesting because I've watched it in my neighbors, I've watched it in people I was in a relationship with. They became something else, and possibly that happened to me too. I got a hell of a temper, and if I think somebody is behaving irrationally, I feel almost compelled to strike out at them. What the hell's wrong with you? You know.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that is coming from within or without. It's something I'm trying to get a hold of, and to this day I still can't talk to my sons. We don't want to have anything to do with you, Dad. Where were you 10 years ago when I was walking out of a hospital?
Man. I think my own opinion from looking at the world around us is that the anger that so many of us have had to deal with in our lives is induced from outside. we're just outraged by the way we're treated as kids. I remember school was the teacher's main job in school was not to prevent conflict or punish aggressors, but to punish anyone that they saw involved in conflict, which usually was not the aggressor. A little boy next to me might reach across the aisle and smack me. Teacher hears that smack and turns around just in time to see me hit him back. Right? Now, what damn fool thinks that I hit him twice? She should know the first smack she heard was him hitting me. He's the one should be heading down to the office. Right? I don't know how it was when you were in school, but that's how it was when I was in school. And I wasn't about to just let somebody hit me and get away with it. So I often ended up punished because I was the one the teacher could see actually doing something. And this kind of thing, I wasn't the only one who went through this. I saw, over and over, myself and other kids, like, oh, you were involved in a conflict. You must have done something to bring it on. I will not punish the aggressor. I'll punish you because the aggressor doesn't obey me. You do. And so you got punished for being a good boy, punished for being a bad boy, punished for being a boy, punished for showing up, punished for waking up, punished for going. What didn't we get punished for? Is any of this, touching a chord in your life?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's as if our parents had not the most basic notion of justice, nor cared that we ever experienced it. Instead of punishing whoever had done something evil to us, they'd say the world isn't fair. And what they're saying is, you're not safe even at home. And that makes the child angry. And we know from in the Bible, the book of James, James 1:19 and 20, that anger is the fountainhead of immorality. If somebody's going to behave in an immoral fashion, they're going to steal, or they're going to seduce women and break their hearts and not really care about them, just to be mean, this person is angry. That's what anger does. Anger can just generally destroy relationships. Just because you're an angry person, you're angry about stuff, and then someone in the relationship does something that's perfectly innocent, but it reminds you of some evil that you experienced that made you angry way back when, and the anger pops up. I mean, what our parents did to us in trying to raise us in I don't know what the hell they were trying to do. I really don't. But the way that kids were raised when you and I were young, it makes them angry. Made us angry. And we had reason to be.
Yeah, I'm probably still angry here. I would like for I'm going to talk here in a minute about this more of this controlled major mass media, because what I'm trying to put together with the Free American here and this radio show is to fight against it. It's to get you to think. One of the things, we talked about this over the week, and you should go back and listen to it. Is part of the mass media is controlled by the Zionists. I call them Jews. Yeah. You can call them whatever you want, but they do control a lot of they control Hollywood. You call them something else. You call them. You can talk about that too. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, the word is undefined. Who is a Jew? Even they can't decide who's a Jew.
No, they don't know. They don't know. And Edomite is a better word, but people can't identify with that. But actually, I think calling them a Jew actually gives them too much publicity.
I agree.
But the idea of being self-sufficient, there's a couple of things that I'm going to be offering to my listeners on the website. On my phone number, you'll be able to call, and that is everything that I'm going to be getting from Joshua. I'm just going to make you aware of it. You can get solar, you can get a wind power, and you can start charging your batteries. I'm assuming you'll probably be carrying battery. If not, get the batteries and get your wind and solar from Joshua. We're all on the same side here. All we want to do is, all you need, really, think about it, is to charge up this cell phone, charge up this hearing aid.
Yeah. Yep.
And we can do this step by step. Everything that you do every time, and especially I'm really excited about the windmills because you can stack those on top of each other and double your power almost instantly.
Yeah, with these windmills, I foresee the day when
I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to go get my ice cube and water here.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I foresee the day when these windmills are going to make every new building that's built power independent the day that they open it, because you can stack as many of these windmills as you want on top of a building. Just if you're going to get into big numbers, 20 or 30 windmills, we need to build them out of a little bit more sturdy pipe, but that's all readily available. That's not even difficult to find. So, because of these possibilities, yeah, we're putting this on the market, and people will be able to get their homes and farms and ranches completely off the grid for very little money. Our goal, our very real goal, is to have to be able to take the average home off grid for under $15,000. That's where we're aiming for. That's where we want to end up, and that's where we think we can get. We're at sun-direct.net, www.sun-direct.net. You can look and see our solar products there. We offer solar-powered backup generators, and we're preparing this new windmill I'm talking about to be on the market soon. We'll have that up just as soon as we get the final version built and get the power curve identified, so you know exactly how much it produces and how much wind. And then we'll get that up on the web, and you'll be able to add that to your system. All of our solar power systems will accept power from windmills and water wheels. After the windmill, the water wheel is next. This will be a modular unit, a 6-foot water wheel that it's in a steel frame and it's on wheels. When it comes off the truck, you just roll it down into the creek where you want it and use your bobcat to push up some dirt and sand beside it to form about a 2-foot deep weir, and you're making power. Because the power coming off of its alternator, red is positive, just like any other DC system. Put that to your batteries, and of course your batteries power your inverter, which powers your house. Okay. We also offer Solar School for anybody who is considering buying a solar power system. You think, well, there's a lot to know here. I don't want to get ripped off. We offer Solar School for $199. It's the same school that we make our authorized dealers take. We'll teach you all about it, everything you need to know to not only carefully buy a system, but to sell one. Okay, so if you wanted to become an authorized dealer for us, then that would allow you to do it. For the short term, you really should look at terraformers.neoviking.com and consider becoming a terraformer. Now, that's not something where you join the terraformers and then you pack a bag and leave the next day like the Peace Corps. You start where you are, doing fundraising and raising awareness. We're raising a fleet to clean the plastic out of the oceans. Right? In order to do that, we have to raise some money. We have to, people have to work. Right? There's work to be done. I'm headed off to the Philippines, I believe that's next month, early October, to talk to some people who own islands there about which one will become our headquarters. Okay. The Philippines is a very good place to do this for a lot of reasons. Modern cities where we can buy anything we might need, plenty of ocean waves to make electricity, right? And having our own island provides us with privacy. And there is where a terraformer would come to begin actually working at the Freedom Fleet and learning all the skills necessary to operate and maintain one of our amazing floating homes, which we call life yachts. And then after a stint at the Freedom Fleet, learning these things, then they would go out into the ocean and actually start cleaning the plastic out of the oceans. Our collector ships are the same as our largest life yacht, the one we call the Manta Ray. The collector ship has a 100-foot collector unit on each side. When I say collector unit, imagine something like AstroTurf that's a conveyor belt, and it's angled down 35 feet deep into the water. And as it turns, the little tufts grab the pieces of plastic and pull them up out of the water, but there's holes in it like AstroTurf, so the water can get through. And then as the belt goes over the top, spray nozzles inside wash the plastic out of the AstroTurf and into the hopper. And the hopper has a grid on top of it, a grating, so that if anything like a fish or a seal or a turtle rides up the conveyor belt, then it simply slides off. You know, it's too big to fall through the grating and slides off back into the water. So we don't catch any fish. We don't catch any seals or turtles or anything like that. We will catch plankton, which is why, following behind the collector fleet, will be farm ships which are raising plankton and refeeding them back into the water. So we don't create a desert. That would actually be worse than the plastic we're removing.
Now, on these windmills, what I'm envisioning is something like the interior of a paper towel holder with fins on it. So you could stack it up on top of each other, you know, and that's just a very simple explanation. But they could be bright colored, and they turn freely. They don't make the noise that these windmills do. You don't have to have acres between these giant windmills like we've got here in Texas.
That's right. You could stack an entire wind farm in a couple of acres and just, you know, run it up 400 or 500 feet. Yeah, that's easy. It's not even difficult. Yeah, it's just the way they set up these stupid wind farms is a deliberate boondoggle. It's a deliberate attempt to just milk the public perception that, oh, we're going green, give us money, we're going green, give us money. Those windmills are so stupid. Are you familiar with oil float bearings, like in the crankshaft of a car?
No.
Or motorcycle? All right, in an oil float bearing, of course, I've got, in an axle, I have a wheel turning around an axle, and I need something in between to reduce friction. Otherwise, the metal wears on metal. In an oil float bearing, the oil pump actually pumps oil up into the center of the axle, and it comes out little holes where the wheel is, and the pressurized oil forms a layer between the two pieces of metal, so metal never touches metal. The wheel is actually floating on pressurized oil and never touches the axle. Right? That's how the crankshaft bearings in your car and motorcycle work. Really. That's why they can go thousands upon thousands of miles and not burn up, because metal touching metal would burn up quick. Right? And with an oil float bearing, an axle will literally never wear out as long as you maintain oil pressure. Okay? Those great big windmills that are used in those wind farms don't use oil float bearings. They use regular bearings, which is why they're so expensive to maintain. Every so often, somebody's got to go tear that thing apart and pack new bearings in grease and put them back, put new ones on that axle at the very heart of the machine, 150 feet up. It is the dumbest damn thing I ever heard in my life. Because with oil float bearings, they would never need to do that. Never. Wouldn't happen. Anyway, those things are just they're built to rip off the public. Their pretense at being green is just a barefaced lie. They don't produce power less expensively than anything else. They're just ridiculous. I mean, they're really ridiculous. But with our windmill, you can stack it on top of a building, and it uses the smaller version, the one we're working on now, actually uses bearings of the type you might find in a skateboard. All right, so you're going to get a long life out of them, but they do need replaced eventually. However, you're not climbing up 150 feet and tearing apart an entire machine. All right, these bearings are easily accessible. It's about a 15-minute job to change them out. I mean, we're building this for the repairman, and not for the factory. And with our wind power, I think that we're going to see cities more and more and more, at least like Midwestern cities where everything's a little bit spread out. We're going to see more and more and more buildings just go completely off the grid, because there just won't be any need. There just won't be any need to, it won't be financially feasible to buy power from the grid when, as you set up your building, you just put on the number of windmills necessary for the power you're going to use. And Clay, before you go, would you run a commercial for a few seconds? Give us 90-second commercial. Okay.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Okay. And yeah, just whenever you're ready. So our windmill isn't so much revolutionary as it is an advance. We've taken all the work that's been done on windmills so far and said, okay, what's the next step? Well, the next step is to build it in such a way that it's less expensive and actually is worth buying, and starts making power at low wind speeds and doesn't require a converter to convert high voltage to battery voltage. All right? Most windmills that you buy today, when you get up to 25-mile-an-hour wind, they're putting out 80 volts. Your battery can't use that. Your battery can only use about 16 volts. Okay? So if you don't have a converter to convert all that excess voltage into amperage, you're wasting power. And that converter is a very expensive machine. Okay? So, yeah, Clay, go ahead and run that ad when you're ready. And then
I don't have it.
Well,
I don't have it. You
don't have?
When did you send it to me?
Oh, I don't. I thought you had other advertisers that wanted to be on.
No.
Give me 90 seconds. Run a PSA or something.
Oh, I can do that.
What do you have? Okay.
I've got
right,
something for my friend Russell Hughes. I've got an ad for him. Here we go.
There you go. All right, I'll be back in a flash and ready to carry
the mighty Phoenix. Friends, if you're a business owner and need capital to sustain or accentuate your business, and if you've been in business for 2 years or more, and your credit scores are low as 500, I can help you. Credit scores don't pay back with money that you borrow. Credit scores are only weapons being used against you in the war on small business. You pay back money that you borrow with business monies earned. So if you have 6 recent bank statements and your business is active, and as I said, you've been in business for over 2 years, I can get you money within 8 business days. Contact me at R as in Russell, J as in James, P as in Peter, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, at yahoo.com. That's RJPPAPA at yahoo.com. And if you're not in business and you need to earn extra cash and you don't want to go out and work for someone who's going to take advantage of you, or you don't want to spend the money to gas and get paid minimum wage, you can work with me, not for me, and earn big commissions. And all you need to do is place ads on the computer, on the internet, on Craigslist, on Backpage, sites, in the financial section. Only 15 minutes a day. Again, contact me at RJPPAPA at yahoo.com.
me your cell phone number. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And we'll discuss the issue. I can help you. Again, rjtpata@yahoo.com. Have a great day, folks.
Okay.
Clay, I've heard that ad before. Do you know anybody who's tested his system to see if it'll actually make money?
I do not, but I've seen numerous of those ads there. They're based on if you've got an income, if your business is working, then he can get you money. Wouldn't work for me because I've been shut down. I don't have any money. Now,
right.
Hopefully, now I would like for you to tell people if let's talk about one of the things that we've talked about is that I would be contacting real estate agents to talk about putting this system on their house. I got no problem with that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to what results you get because you're just one of the best salespeople I've ever seen. Part of the problem solar power faces, probably the biggest problem, is the people are just unfamiliar with it. I mean, they hear about it on the radio, see on TV maybe, but like one of my very first dealers said, until you ship me this, excuse me, I had never put my hand on a solar panel, didn't really understand what they do or how they work, right? But when he had a system in hand, he got one of our solar-powered backup systems, and he saw, okay, the solar power turns sunlight into electricity. It goes down these wires and goes into the battery, and then the inverter takes the battery power and turns that into 110-volt AC. It's got plugs on the front, just like I'm used to seeing on the wall. And I went down there one day. He's got 4 friends over there. They've all got something plugged into the inverter, power saw, power drill, electric chainsaw, stuff like that. And they're all running these at once, and they're going, wow, this is amazing. And it's the 21st century. I've been around technology my whole life, so I didn't realize that other people, they don't experience this stuff, and so it's still really amazing. They're standing there just running their power saw and watching it go, and it's not plugged into the wall. It's plugged into this system, which isn't plugged into the wall, and they're going, wow, this is amazing. So it's the education, the awareness that is really lacking, and so we're offering Solar School, and this is what we've asked for you to introduce to the real estate market, and it'll work like this. You'd call up a realtor, and they answer the phone, and you say, I can boost your commissions by several thousand for sale. Can I do my commercial? And they'll say, well, yeah, sure. And you say, well, I'm with Sun Direct Power Incorporated. We offer whole house packages to get us the house off the grid. And so you'd be able to say to a prospect, that house is $100,000 with a $300 a month electric bill, or $180,000 with no electric bill. Which one do you like?
All right.
And
What
then
about,
if they want
let me interrupt. What about somebody that's just got a house right across the street here? Pretty nice house, probably $100,000 home, maybe $150,000. What can I offer them? What would it cost them? What would they get for it?
Well, if the cost of putting in a solar power system is high enough that unless you're going to package it into the purchase of the house, either when you buy it or do a refi, the payback time is probably going to be unattractive, right? Because it's going to take 20, 22 years to get your money back, right? But you will get it back eventually. What you can offer them is say, hey, if you want to get off the grid, take your biggest electric bill, which is usually August, okay? Look at the number of kilowatt hours that you paid for, typically, 1,000, 1,500, whatever that number is, multiply that by $49. So if they're using 1,000 kilowatt hours in August, $49,000 will buy our whole house package. And for that money, we will make sure that you have 1,000 kilowatt hours, not in August, in February. The month with the shortest days, or January, whichever month has the least sunlight in your area. That's the month we're going to make sure you have that number of kilowatt hours. So in your strongest month, typically August, you're going to have 2 or 3 times that amount. Right? We'll provide you a battery bank large enough to get you through 2 full days of no sunshine at all. And we provide you with 2 4,000-watt inverters that are going to provide you with 8,000 total watts of service, which is about like hooking up, oh, I should do this math and quit talking out my nose. 8,000 divided by 120. Yeah, that's 67 amp service. All right. If you want more than that, we can make that happen too. But we can make sure that you have that much power every day of the year, battery bank large enough to get you through 2 full days of no sunshine, which that actually happens in the northern Midwest. They have these huge thunderstorms that roll in and will block out the sun for 2 days, and huge snowstorms in winter that'll come in and block out the sun for 2 days. So we're going to keep you lit. And it's going to cost the number of kilowatt hours you want times $49. And that's installed. Okay? We take care of everything. Okay? Then you can also offer them one of our solar power backup systems. When the power goes out, there's a few things you really want to keep running until it comes back on. You want to keep your cable modem running, because the cable company has its own power source. They didn't go down. But if you can't run your modem, you can't get on the internet and find out what's going on. Right? So you want your modem running, and you want your computer powered up. Right? You want your refrigerator to keep going. You want some lights. You want your alarm clock on so you can be sure and get up for work the next day. Right? I mean, there's some basics that you want to run. Our solar-powered backup system will keep those things going. And next day when the sun comes up, the solar panels start to recharge your batteries. Right? When the power comes back on, don't just put the system in a closet and forget about it. Keep using it. Let it take, say, a 25 cubic foot freezer completely off the grid. Our basic system will do that. Our 4K system, well, even our 2K system in many places will do that, depending on the amount of sunshine available. But our 4K system, almost anywhere in the U.S., will take a 25 cubic foot freezer completely off the grid. So when the power goes out, if it's going to be out for a while, you don't need to worry about the food going bad. That's the primary thing with the power, is it keeps the food from going bad. Yeah? So those 2 things you can offer the guy across the street that's just built a new house. And our systems also provide 220 volt power. So if someone is pumping water out of a well, those well pumps are typically 220. Right? And our systems come with a 220 watt or 220 volt converter. It's the same type of converter that a European would use if they came to the U.S. so that they can plug in their own hair dryer and electric razor and other appliances. Okay, it's that kind of a converter, but it will convert up to 3,000 watts of your system's output to 220 volts. I've never seen a well pump that used more than 750 watts. They may be out there, but that's a horsepower is 746 watts. The biggest well pump I've ever seen was 1 horse. So that means you have a 3-fold safety factor. Lots and lots of power available in 220. It's enough to run a clothes dryer. Most clothes dryers at 220 are only, good Lord, 2,200 watts. They're not terrible. Yeah. So that's what our systems can do. Very powerful. Very, very able to take care of your business for you. And when you're becoming energy independent, it's good to learn how these things work. So, go to www.sun-direct.net, and right at the top in the upper right is a button, or go to the store page, go to the store page at the top in the upper right. First thing we offer is Solar School. It's $199, and if you decide you want to become one of our authorized dealers, we will refund that back against your first order. Okay? But either way, you'll learn about solar so that nobody's going to rip you off, and so that if you want to help out your friends and help them get a solar power system set up. You'll know what you need to know to do that. Now, let's talk about the terraformers a little bit.
Okay.
Part of becoming independent, self-sufficient, is energy self-sufficiency. If you stay on land, you have a real problem in that regard, because either you got to cut down a tree and burn it, or you got to drill for oil or gas, or you got to be right next to a moving stream, or you got to set up a windmill, and you have to be somewhere where the wind is worth a darn. And there's a lot of places in this country where you have one or more of those available. But if you already own a piece of land that isn't those things, you've got a problem, okay? Just from an energy standpoint, because someone else has to bring you energy and sell it to you. And as society collapses, their ability to do that is going to get weaker and weaker, which means it's going to be more and more and more expensive, right? At sea, the waves are always moving. And if I have a boat and I stick a lever out into the ocean with a float on the end of it, every time the ocean raises that float, I can make that lever turn a generator and make electricity that goes into my batteries. Right? And that happens anywhere on the ocean I may be. If I'm going to go somewhere where the wave action is low, like you see these beautiful pictures of Fiji where there's the houses on the hotel room is on stilts and the ocean is so calm, all right? If I'm going to go somewhere like that, I have to plan ahead. I have to have a battery bank that's going to, carry me through there, right? And I have to realize the winds are going to be very light, so I'm not going to move very fast, which is going to make it, even a larger battery bank, because it's going to take me longer to get through there. But I can plan for that, and I can stay out of those places. If I go down around South America off the coast of Chile, the weather there isn't particularly rough, and it's not particularly cold. I mean, it's sweater and jacket, okay, kind of weather. But I can have wave motion all the time. I mean, if I want to build a floating factory and it's got levers all around it with floats on them going up and down, making electricity, I can do that. And it'll just sit there offshore and make its own electricity and crank out, cars or toasters or whatever I'm manufacturing. That's entirely possible. So energy independence really matters. And if I'm going to have some sort of industry, I need energy for that industry. And that is freely available at sea. I mean, it is so cheap. The Wave Reaper, which is a very simple design that makes lots and lots of electricity, it's the cheapest form of electricity known to man. It's so effective that its inventor was disappeared by the powers that be. This was a guy from Sweden. He went down to South America, and he was in one of the Guyanas, French or Dutch Guyana. He worked with the government there to get permits to use a piece of beach, and he set up for under $20,000 US. He set up a power plant that made 2 million watts constantly, using nothing more than plastic barrels floating in the ocean, and every time a wave lifted the barrel, it pulled on a steel cable which went around a pulley and up to the beach where it was wrapped around a shaft, and it turned the shaft. That's it. That's all he did, and that made 2 million watts so cheaply that he got on the phone to his friends back in Sweden a few days after he got it started. He said, I think I'm being followed. And then a couple days later he calls and he says, I was in a car accident today that I don't think was an accident. And then that was the last they heard from him. He disappeared. His friends put the design of the Wave Reaper up on the web as a memorial to him to make sure that the word got out, the design got out. Okay? So now we all know how to do this, but you'll notice nobody's building one and trying to sell the power from it. See, if he weren't going to sell the power from it, if he just built one for his own use, no one would care. Okay? But he thought he could change the world, and the fact is, you can't change the world, and it'll kill you for trying. You can change your life. You can change how you do things. And fact is that our society has so many problems. Would there really be a point to creating electricity so cheap that you could sell it to everybody for a penny a kilowatt hour and you could become a millionaire, but you're still in the same sick society? What would be the point? That's like in a cesspool full of turds, and one of the turds at the bottom says, hey, I want to be top turd. He's still a turd, and he's still in a cesspool. There wouldn't be any point. But you can change your life. You can change so you look somebody in the eye and say, my way of life is better than yours. It's better for the planet. It's better for me. It's better for the people around me. It's better for my young'uns. I have the right to look down on you because I'm better than you. You can actually change your life so that you can do that. For some people, being able to sneer at other people is a basic human drive. So, maybe they should do this. For other people, just the knowledge that they're doing things well and right is what matters. And that's one of the things we offer in the Terraformers. This method of making electricity I describe is exactly, it's one of the cheap ways that we'll make electricity in the Terraformers. I say one of the ways because in different situations you want to use different ways of extracting energy from the environment around you. But nobody is going to have to drill a hole in the world and refine some oil to sell me some energy. That's not going to happen. On our farm ships, we'll be able to grow hemp to make our own hemp oil. So if somebody really wants a motorized unit, which we will have millions of those. I mean, people are industrious. We make stuff. We build stuff. So of course we're going to have industry. Right? We can run that industry in anywhere where there's not enough wave motion. We'll be able to run regular diesel motors or even, actually I like the Tesla turbine, using hemp oil as the heat source. I mean, steam is an amazingly efficient way to turn energy into mechanical work. And hemp oil is a great way to do that, especially because of the byproducts of growing hemp. You've done whole shows on hemp, right? We can even, one of our goals after we're established where the powers that be have little hold on us, we plan to do some experiments in building our life yachts with hempcrete. Lighter than wood, stronger than steel.
There is a bridge in Europe that's 500 years old, built out of hempcrete.
Oh, I have to disagree. That bridge is 600 years old. And it's built out of hempcrete. I believe that one is in France. Anybody who starts learning about hemp seems like they eventually come across that one. It's just amazing what this stuff is, what God put in this world so that we can accomplish anything we want to accomplish without poisoning it and blowing it up and drilling and,
He put it in the Bible. It's called the plant of renown. There's no other plant on earth that can do everything that hemp can do.
Yeah, there just isn't. There really isn't. And I just discovered recently, I don't know what your arteries look like inside. Mine are starting to get a little bit clogged, but I've discovered pomegranate. And I'm going to cite the study from memory, so these numbers might not be accurate, but participants in the study drank a quart of pomegranate juice per day for a month, and their arterial plaque was reduced by 12%. There's no medicine in the world can do that. When I read that, I ordered in some pomegranate extract, and I could take 3 of those, and in an hour, I felt different. It was like my lungs had become bottomless pits, and I was full of energy. And I'm 51, and I haven't had any exercise in a long time because of some foot problems I had back in the late 2000s. And I could get out and run. It was amazing what this stuff did. So I've ordered in a pound of pomegranate juice powder. I'm going to start making my own pomegranate Kool-Aid. We'll see how that does. Because pills, the pomegranate extract pills were just awesome. Just be sure to make sure when you buy pomegranate powder or pills, it is non-GMO. Because if you eat GMOs, you have a very strong risk of becoming a GMO. You don't want to do that.
Absolutely. That Monsanto is just.
It's anti-life. They are trying to violate the most basic fact of the universe. It's not even a law. It's just a fact that they're trying to create life, so they can say, "Well, I made that." I even see a headline now and then: "So and so has invented a new life form," and I read closely, and I find out he got the DNA and a functioning nucleus for one cell from another cell. He did not create something new. He just transferred it's like he did a head transplant. Okay. Life is a supernatural condition superimposed on an otherwise dead universe. Monsanto will never defeat that fact. It is a fact written into our existence.
I just had a guest on 2 days ago that exposed Darwin, and if you really start looking into it, Darwin's completely wrong. We didn't come about that way.
And what he was reported to have said and written is also barefaced lies. He wrote about the cooperation between species, and that was his main thrust. He did write about competition, okay, but his main thrust was cooperation, and it's been reported to us as competition. Here's the way the world is: kill or be killed, eat or be eaten. And that's most of what he wrote about was how species work together to help one another avoid being eaten, like the zebra and the wildebeest. Right? The zebra are tall enough they can see the lion coming. If the lion manages to sneak up close, the wildebeest can hold him off for a while the zebras get away. And then the wildebeest is going to suffer in that fight, so he wants to hang out with the zebra and get an early warning. Okay, but they work together. And this is the kind of thing that Darwin wrote about a lot. He also freely admitted, there just weren't any in between fossils, any intermediary steps, and he had no idea what to do with that. He was still pretty sure that we came from a rock, okay? But he wasn't, or what has been done with his work, I think, is far worse than what he tried to do with it. And we've just been lied to about it.
We've been lied to about everything.
Well, and the Bible is being edited out from under us. I don't know if anybody cares about the Bible being edited out from under us in a given audience, but I bring it up whenever I can. There are scriptures that I grew up reading pew Bibles that were printed in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and I remember scriptures. I've talked to other people and said, "Do you remember this verse?" And they said, "Well, yeah, that's in the Bible." And I say, "No, it isn't. Not anymore. It was in the Bibles we read as a kid. But someone has removed it from every version, every edition, and I can't even find reference to it on the web." And the verse I'm talking about, it was kind of a throwaway verse. Moses was about to preach a sermon, and at the beginning, in the intro to the sermon, he said, "Our ancestors before the flood, who built with steel and asphalt," blah, 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 blah. He went on to preach his sermon. That line about our ancestors before the flood has been removed from every Bible I can find. It's not there. I can't find it in a concordance. I can't find mention of it on the web, any of the various search engines. Now that bothers me, that someone is editing out a piece of history.
They don't want us to know about the worldwide civilization that existed before the flood. Moses came down on top of the mountain, I believe. I believe that's after the flood. All of the peoples on the earth, all the civilizations on earth came down from the mountains. How'd they get up there? What were they doing up there?
Well, at the end of the flood, that's where the ark came to rest. But even so, we know that the ancient world, at least before the flood, had flight. We have reason to believe they had space flight. I personally think the flood was caused by an interplanetary war between the Earth and the two colonies one of them was on Mars, and one was on the planet that used to be between Mars and Jupiter, and that planet is now the asteroid belt as a result of the weapons used in that war.
I agree.
That's how I think the flood came about. maybe one day I'll raise some money and make that into a movie, because it's a good sci-fi movie.
In some of my writings here, I suggested that those people in those ships left this planet to preserve the knowledge of the planet. And we call them gods now. We call them angels. We call them Zeus. We call them Jehovah, that type of thing. And, of course, Lucifer.
Yeah, well, Lucifer's kind of a Johnny-come-lately. He was pretty much invented by the Catholic Church, based on, I think, drawings they saw when they came into Celtic Britain. Because the reference in Isaiah is to I believe, a Babylonian king. There's no indication there that that's actually some kind of demonic being. But even so, we do have, throughout the Bible, we have this thing called the opponent, Satan. That's just the Hebrew word for opponent.
Right.
Yeah. And, yeah. But be all that as it may, in the terraformers, if you want to really be free from this civilization, just be able to do business with it when you feel like it and not interact when you don't. And more importantly, if you want your young'uns to get through the population bottleneck that's ahead, joining the terraformers is the best bet for either for you or for them. Because after a set term of service, we hand you the keys to a brand new floating home that will go anywhere in the world. There's 6 feet of water and a decent breeze. It makes all its own electricity, makes all its own hot and cold fresh running water and climate control. It carries a car or truck on board and an inboard garage. It'll back up to the beach to launch and recover it. It has farm and garden space on board to feed 10 people every meal, including your morning coffee and the pepper on your pepper steak.
When do you expect to get the first one of these completed?
Next year. Yeah. We're moving forward fast enough that we believe we'll put our first one in the water next year. I've got a person who just started as a fundraiser specifically for the terraformers. Right? The Sea Lions Foundation is a nonprofit organization, so donations are tax deductible. This person is fundraising for the terraformers because they're a division of the Sea Lions Foundation. The Sea Lions Foundation is a Christian organization, but the terraformers is a secular effort. Anybody can join. We don't preach at you. All we ask is that you keep your language reasonably clean and wear clothes when you show up. Okay, that's it. Well, when I was in high school,
I might be able to handle that. But
when I was in high school, I moved from northern Kentucky, where I was attending a private school that had a really strict hair and dress code, to the south suburbs of Chicago. And the dress code in the student manual was, and this has stuck with me all my life, I'm 50 years old, the dress code was, the student will wear opaque material between shoulders and mid-thighs. Bare midriffs are allowed. The student will wear something between the student's feet and the floor. Pantyhose do not count as something. That was the dress code. There was no hair code.
Well, keep me informed on this. I would like to, personally, I'd like to have one of those first, or be part of the crew of that first life yacht.
We want you on that life yacht, absolutely. We're getting
if I'm writing about that, if I'm writing about it and I'm there, I mean that there's the publicity that your person needs to promote it.
Yep.
I think. And meanwhile, I did get your email there on what we've got for sale here. What do we got?
Oh, and later this week, I've got to stop in. There's a company here in Tulsa that sells stone for buildings, okay, called Rosser Stone. And the couple that owns it, the wife is named Terry, and she has the most beautiful voice known to mankind. I'm going to try to persuade her to be our voice, to do our PSAs and documentaries. I mean, when you hear this woman's voice, you will say, wow. Well, maybe you won't. I did. Okay. Have you heard? The commercials for Robinson Glass? They're nationwide. They might be out there in Big Springs. Whoever's singing their jingle, Robinson Glass, man, she has a gorgeous voice. This lady's is more beautiful. So I'm going to see if I can get her to be our voice. And then publicity that you write. Yeah, publicity that you write will be read in one of the most beautiful voices known to man. But yeah, we expect to get one in the water next year.
Great.
And it's going to be exponential from then. I mean, get one in the water, and then 10, and then 100, and then 1,000. All right, because we're doing everything we can to help people escape we call them slaver empires or shorebound societies. Any civilization where the government acts as if it owns you, they claim the right to send you off to battle to be blown up, they see you as a slave, and we see that society as a slaver empire. So we're working to help people escape slaver empires. Even the United States is one of those. Even though the Constitution says there will be no involuntary servitude. This was fought out in the Supreme Court during Vietnam. The Supreme Court said the Constitution can't conflict with itself, and it says that the Congress has the authority to raise armies. Therefore, the draft is constitutional, when in fact, that is not what raise armies means. Raise armies means persuade people to join, not force them.
Right.
So we're doing everything we can to help people escape the slaver empires, the shorebound societies, and particularly the vicissitudes of the economy going up and down. I mean, I've seen my parents lose more money than you could shake a stick at over the years. I haven't invested in real estate, but it seems like every time they bought a house, they ended up losing money on it because the economy would downturn right when they had to move somewhere else, or right after they'd moved somewhere and put the house on the market. Sheesh. So yeah, we're moving forward on this. We're making this happen.
All right.
And
I'm looking forward to working with you, and I got the email. Send me a JPEG to put up on my site.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll get that up.
Awesome. Great. Okay.
Let's
see, 10:56. How we doing for time? How long is your closer?
You got 3 minutes.
All right. Folks, to be a terraformer, to get one of these amazing life yachts, you do not need to write us a check. You need to help us raise money. And for every $50 you bring in, we credit you with an hour toward your life yacht. When you've put in enough hours, we hand you the keys to a brand new one. That's how it works. You can either raise money to get those hours, and you can raise up to 30% of the hours that you need for a life yacht before you come full-time to the Freedom Fleet and start actually building life yachts. When you come to the Freedom Fleet, bring your family. It's a family environment. We'll have school and an infirmary and, I mean, everything that, families need to be healthy and happy. It actually will be a lot like a college campus. The Fleet Life Director is in charge of making sure that, there are games and there are volleyball pits and, everything else you need to be happy, but also schools and churches, anything that you might need to be a part of a civilization. We'll have all that there for you. And you'll spend some amount of time working on building life yachts. You can see all this on terraformers.neoviking.com and freedomfleet.net. The details on the life yachts are on freedomfleet.net. That's www.freedomfleet.net. All one word, no hyphen. And you spend some time building life yachts. We sell a portion of the life yachts that we build. And when you work on them that's sold for cash, you get a piece of the profit. And that's proportionate to how many hours you put in. If you worked 500 hours and somebody else worked 1,000, they're going to make twice what you did on that sale, right? But we're not going to work you like a slave for free. Anything that we sell for money, you get a piece of that you worked on, okay?
All right,
then,
we're out of time here.
Okay?
God bless you.
All right, man. God bless you. I will send you some JPEGs to put up. I'm going to send you one of our 5K system, okay?
Okay, sure. Thank you.
All right, man. Have a blessed day. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.